Good morning, everyone. This is Mike.
And Sonara.
And we start our proceedings this morning with an item by Tim Morris.
Good morning, everybody. This is Tim from reception at the Isle of Wight Society for the Blind. Some of you I may have met when you have come into Millbrook House for different clubs or to ask about different things and information. I have been working at the Society for 3.5 years, during which time I have had the pleasure of being involved in many different events. I have some news that I'd like to share with you all. I am going to be leaving the Society at the end of July to take up a new role with the Naval Chaplaincy Service at Portsmouth. I would just like to take this opportunity to thank everybody for their kindness and for making my time at the Society memorable. Although I am sad to be leaving, I am looking forward to taking up my new job and getting stuck into the challenges that this will bring. I wish the staff, volunteers, and all of you the very best for the future, and I will try to drop in from time to time.
The Society News for Friday, 30th of June 2017. Monday. It's Dolphin Technology Information Day on Monday the 3rd of July. Dolphin will be coming to Millbrook House along with Calibre, Enhanced Vision, Orcam, Wireless for the Blind, Blind Veterans and the Macular Society. They will be bringing information and some equipment with them for demonstration. The event will be a drop-in from 10 a.m. till 2:30 p.m, so no appointments will be necessary. On Tuesday, the following coffee mornings are held in support of the Society on Tuesday the 4th of July. The coffee mornings are at Knighton in the post office, starting at 10:15 until 12 p.m. The Dolphin Swim Group will meet at the Waterside Pool in Ryde on Tuesday, 4th of July. Swimming starts at 8 p.m. and the group has sole use of the pool for this session. Lifeguards are present while the group are swimming. If you wish to join, please call the Society first to advise us of your level of swimming ability. On Wednesday, the Society Coffee Morning will be held this coming Wednesday, the 5th of July. Come and join us for a cup of coffee and a chat. Why not bring a friend along as well, as the coffee mornings are open to all. The Society Coffee Morning will be joined by the Macular Degeneration Group for their monthly meeting. The next Owls session will be meeting on Wednesday, the 5th of July at 2 p.m. in Millbrook House. The entertainment for the meeting will be a TV theme quiz. The quizmaster will be our very own Chris Kane. The group lasts approximately 45 minutes, which is then followed by tea or coffee and cake. On Thursday, the Knitters and Natterers will be meeting at Millbrook House this Thursday, 6th of July, 10:30 a.m. till 2 p.m. There is help for knitting at all levels, coffee and chat, and readers that will entertain you in the afternoon. Please note, transport may be available to some of the groups, but please call the Society first on 522205. And any other news? As some of you are aware, the Society is conducting a client consultation survey. To give you an advanced warning of the questions included in the survey, it follows the recording of In Touch for as long as the survey continues. If you would like to complete a survey independently, please contact the Society on 522205 and ask for a copy. Alternatively, you can find the survey on our website at www.iwsb.org.uk. And the Society has received some new padded wallets which will be trialled on both the Talking News and Library Service. If you receive one of these new wallets, you will notice instead of a Velcro top, they have a zip. However, you will still need to turn the address card round on the front as normal.
And now we move on to the scaffolding news. We start with the Bay Area. Lloyds Bank, Regent Street, Shanklin. 8 New Road, Brading. Cowes Area. Development Site, Castle Street East, Cowes. 2 Sun Hill, Cowes. Carville Court, Terminus Road, Cowes. 272 to 283 Arctic Road, Cowes. 93 High Street, Cowes. The Royal British Legion at 85 High Street, Cowes, due up the 10th of July. Grace's Bakery, 31 High Street, Cowes, due up the 10th of July. A new scissors lift at Waitrose, Welsh Street East, Cowes, due up the 14th of August, and the footway is to be closed, the bus stop to be out of action and may be relocated. In the Newport area, we have Nippert Court, West Street, Newport, the Spectacle Maker, 81A High Street, Newport. Current hoardings in the Newport area: Home Bargains, Taylor Road, Gunville Road, Carisbrook. Stead and Simpson, 121 High Street, Newport, due up the 3rd of July. 127 Honey Hill, Newport, due up the 3rd of July. 136/137 Pyle Street, Newport, due up the 17th of July. And in the Ryde area, we have Solent Court, Castle Street, Ryde. 25 George Street, Ryde. Ryde Street Gallery, 129A High Street, Ryde. St Mary's Church, Ryde, along St Mary's Passage. Land of Roses, 2 Union Street, Ryde. 49 Union Street, Ryde. Oasis Dental Care, 9 Melville Street, Ryde. The Royal British Legion Club, 1 St James's Street, Ryde. The Ryde Town Club, Star Street, Ryde. The Star, High Street, Ryde. The Cabin, Nelson Place, Ryde, due up the 3rd of July. Saltmead Cottage, Blewett Avenue, Sea View, due up the 6th of July. Now the West Wight area, the King's Head, Key Street, Yarmouth. Freeze Jewellers, Kimberley House, High Street, Freshwater. Coleman's Carpets, Avenue Road, Freshwater, due up the 6th of July. 5153 School Green Road, Freshwater, due up the 7th of July. And finally, the South Wight area, 20 High Street, Ventnor. 47 Moorview, God's Hill.
And this week's In Touch. In this week's episode, listener Mike Kelly lost his sight in the 30s, shortly after he'd finished his training as an architect. He underwent intensive rehabilitation and has had a successful full-time career in the civil service. Now aged 65, Mike has chosen to retire. Mixed in with the excitement of starting a new chapter in his life, he has some fears and concerns as well. David Black, who has retinitis pigmentosa, was attacked 3 times. Despite having studied martial arts, he felt unable to defend himself as a blind person. He sought help from a charity in Scotland which runs self-defence courses for disabled people. David's confidence has skyrocketed since, and he now teaches the same course which helped boost his confidence to other blind people. Emma Tracy from BBC Ouch went along to meet David and pick up one or two self-defense tricks. The questionnaire follows in touch.
And now we move on to the County Press for June the 30th, and the headlines are: Friends fundraise for biker's funeral, and Golden Girls on target.
The Friends fundraise for biker's funeral, and a subheading: Boat builder 30 killed in road crash. Friends and family have paid warm tributes to motorcyclist, boat builder and serial prankster Peter Kilshaw, who was tragically killed following an accident near Shelfleet, and they are now fundraising to help pay for his funeral. Mr. Kilshaw, 30, of Terminus Road, Cowes, was involved in a collision with a VW Beetle in Corfe Road at 5:30 p.m. last Wednesday. Passers-by rushed to Mr. Kilshaw's aid and gave CPR before emergency services arrived at the scene. Mr. Kilshaw worked as a boat builder in East Cowes and is a former pupil of Cowes High School. He also was an instructor with Cowes Seed Cadets. Mr. Kilshaw's family and girlfriend paid tribute to him. In a statement they said, "Peter was a lovely lad who'd do anything for anyone. He was gentle, loving, and had a heart of gold. He was a serial prankster who always had us smiling, laughing, and joking. He always arrived to be his best." I'll read that again. "He always strived to be his best and was a perfectionist. He will be sorely missed by his family, girlfriend, and friends." A crowdfunding page has been set up to raise £5,000 to cover the cost of Mr. Kilshaw's funeral. The page, which can be found at tinyurl.com/IWCP-PKF, states, "On 21st of 6th, 2017, we lost a dear friend due to a tragic motorbike accident. Pete Kilshaw was only 30 years old. A great friend, son, sea cadet instructor and prank artist. We're raising money to help towards the funeral. Any outstanding left over will be donated towards the Cowes Sea Cadets, where P.O. Kilshaw was an amazing instructor, loved by all the cadets." At the time of going to press, more than £1,500 had been raised. Ronnie Keats, who owns Rocket Ronnie's in Chain Lane, Newport, where Mr. Kilshaw played pool, is holding a tournament on Sunday, also to raise funds for the funeral. The tournament begins at 2 p.m. The driver of the VW, a 62-year-old man, was uninjured in the accident. Isle of Wight Roads policing officers are continuing to investigate the circumstances of the crash. Anyone with information is asked to call them on 101, quoting 44170 237 046. Information can also be given anonymously to Crime Stoppers on 0800 555 111. And the second headline, Golden Girls on target. Shooting sisters Shelley and Imogen Moss are proving to be the Golden Girls of the Island Games in Gotland, Sweden, winning a clutch of gold medals. Golden Girls on target, and it's shooting.
And that, of course, is a report which relates to the Island Games, this year being held in Gotland. And we have a sub-headline here, Hat-trick of wins for Ireland's Golden Girls. Sisters Imogen and Shelley Moss enjoyed a flawless first half to their Island Games in Gotland. Between Sunday and Tuesday, the pair won 3 golds. In the team 10-metre air pistol, sport pistol and standard events. Imogen, aged 26, said, "We did feel some pressure coming into the games because compared to 2 years ago in Jersey, we are shooting a lot more regularly with the England Academy and the GB shooting programme for sport pistol. In Jersey we had to borrow guns, but now we have our own, so we definitely had high expectations, but to win 3 golds was brilliant." Shelley, aged 20, added, "We had high hopes, but I didn't expect it, especially the standard because we don't shoot standard, so that was the biggest surprise. All 3 were a shock, in a nice way."
New boats for Newport rowers. Thanks to donations from members, Newport Rowing Club, NRC, has 2 new boats, which were launched on the River Medina on Sunday. The club, formed in 1863 and one of the oldest rowing clubs in the region, celebrated the event with a champagne launch. The first unveiled was the single coastal scull Isabella in the club's colours of yellow and blue. It was named after the Isle of Wight's medieval noblewoman, Countess Isabella de Fortibus. The boat was launched by Councillor Peter Whiteman, Vice Chairman of Newport Parish Council. The Parish Council gave the club a grant towards the purchase. Wight Crew Ladies had the honour of launching the second boat, Big G, named after club chairman Gordon Groves. They funded the boat after Mr. Groves taught the team to do coastal rowing, enabling them to cross the English Channel. The club's coastal pairs boat will enable NRC to take part in pair sweep events throughout the racing season.
Holiday legal battle ends in conviction. The father who fought a long legal battle over taking his daughter on a term-time holiday was found guilty by Ireland magistrates for the unauthorised absence from school. John Platt of Eddington Road at Nettleston took his daughter out of school to go on holiday to Florida in April 2015. He lost a legal challenge in the Supreme Court after judgment on the case. In both, the original magistrates' hearing and a High Court hearing were appealed by the Isle of Wight Council. The argument was over what was considered regular attendance at school, and the Supreme Court ruled in a landmark hearing regularly meant in accordance with the school's rules. Therefore, because the holiday to Florida was an unauthorised absence, magistrates last Friday ruled Mr. Platt had failed to ensure his child regularly attended school, bringing a criminal conviction against him. Representing Mr. Platt, Paul Greatorex said, "There had been 8.5 million unauthorised absences in a single term in the UK last year, and since the Supreme Court ruling, the parents of those students would now potentially be branded criminals. I can't think of any offence that is committed so regularly," Mr. Greatorex said. Giving evidence, Mr. Platt said in an application for absence from his daughter's school, had said the satisfactory attendance was 90 to 95%. Mr. Platt calculated his daughter's attendance would still fall above 90% if they took the holiday. However, Ben Rich, prosecuting on behalf of the Isle of Wight Council, said because permission was not granted for the term time holiday, Mr. Platt had been in breach of the school rules and should therefore be prosecuted. Mr. Platt was given a 12-month conditional discharge, but was ordered to pay £2,000 court costs. The case has cost the taxpayer £140,000 and Mr. Platt personally almost £30,000. Speaking after the trial, Mr. Platt said, "I feel relieved it is over. I'm not going to appeal this decision. I'm going to do what the Isle of Wight Council should have done in the first place and respect what the magistrates have said. It is critical now parents call up schools and ask what their school's rules state." And following on from that report is another comment which says, "Clarity needed from schools." A lawyer specialising in school fines has called for policy clarity on term time absence following the conclusion of the John Platt case. Judy Robertson from Simpson Miller is urging head teachers to set out their school's policy on dealing with term time holidays. She argues this is especially important given the Supreme Court ruled in the John Platt case that regular attendance is defined as being in accordance with the rules prescribed by the school. Therefore, by breaking the school rules, parents are failing to ensure their children regularly attend schools, which is a criminal offence. Julie said, "I am a parent and a lawyer, yet I still struggle to understand many of the attendance policies I have read in terms of how schools will deal with requests to take a child out of school during term time. The issue of school fines and term time holidays has received a lot of attention, but, sadly, it hasn't helped clarify the situation for parents. Now is the time for schools across the country to assess their attendance policies and make it absolutely clear to parents that what the tolerance is. The current ambiguity is unhelpful for parents who simply want to make the best decisions for their family and now struggle to decide whether or not to visit elderly relatives abroad or attend an overseas wedding for fear of prosecution. A council-wide policy on dealing with requests for time off during the term time would be ideal. This could then filter down to the schools within that council area and would lead, at least, to consistency and clarity for parents.
Alice, at 105, marks the birthday in style. A visit from the High Sheriff and a high tea with her friends. That was how Alice Sides celebrated her 105th birthday this week. Inver House Activities Coordinator Gemma Coleman said Alice, who has lived at the Bembridge House since September 2014, had a lovely time on her special day. She added, they had sandwiches and cake and she was sitting around the table laughing with her friends. Alice, originally from Cannock, West Midlands, moved to live in Ventnor in 1973 and has resided on the island ever since. Gemma said, Alice is lovely. She's friends with everyone, all the staff and residents. She's an absolute pleasure to be around.
Ride Academy students get extra week off. Pupils at Ride Academy will have an extra week off during the October half-term to ensure work on the new school building is completed. It has delayed its move into the new school, which forms part of the Department for Education's Priority School Building programme, until early November. In a statement, the school, which is run by the Academy's Enterprise Trust, said, Ride Academy is having an extended October half-term break from October the 23rd to November the 3rd. All students will then return to the new building on Monday, November the 6th. 3 of the days of the extended half-term will be made up of inset days, so students will miss 2 days of school. Arrangements will be put in place for students to have work that can be completed at home. We appreciate this is not ideal, but the building of a new school is a once-in-a-lifetime event for most students, and we want to make sure the building is ready and safe.
Jailed for harassment and assault of police. A man punched a police officer in the face and hid in a garden storage box until he was found, a court heard. Jamie Mobley, 37, of no fixed address, appeared at the Isle of Wight Crown Court last Friday. He pleaded guilty to assault after he punched a police officer on May the 24th. The court heard that Mobley was being disruptive outside a pub on Ventnor seafront when the police were called. An officer attempted to arrest him, and Mobley asked if he was alone before saying, "Good luck with that," and striking him in the face. Mobley then ran and hid in a garden storage box. He was found by police several hours later. Mobley said he tried to take his own life by drinking a glass of weed killer and couldn't remember the incident. He has since apologised to the officer, who is still struggling to open his jaw properly. He also pleaded guilty to harassing his on-off partner by sending more than 300 abusive text messages. The court heard that Mobley, who had 25 previous convictions, had issues with drugs and alcohol, and had been responding well to the help available in custody. He was also found guilty of harassing Vicky Hogan. Mobley was sentenced to a total of 8 months in prison.
Hate crime victim speaks out about her ordeal. A transgender woman who faced a barrage of abuse from a neighbour has spoken out about her ordeal to raise awareness of hate crimes. Vicky Hogan, aged 56, of Wootton, began living as a woman a year and a half ago after knowing since she was young, but struggling to accept, that she was a gay woman. She bravely faced her harasser, Jamie Mobley, in court last Friday. Mobley, aged 37, of no fixed address, was jailed for 3 months after he hurled abuse at Vicky outside her home while visiting his parents in March, shouting that she was a paedophile. He was found guilty of harassment. Vicky lived in Canada for 18 years, but moved to the Isle of Wight in February, determined to build a new, peaceful life. She is a former London firefighter, member of the armed forces and military police officer, and said Mobley tried to destroy the life she had created within the amazingly supportive island community. I wanted to be free and live out my retirement in peace and harmony, but he tried to destroy that. He burst my bubble, she said. I didn't want any connection to my old life, but he disturbed everything, and a little bit of the old me had to come back in order to deal with him, and I didn't want that. Vicky, who has been married twice and has 5 children, previously worked at youth homeless shelters and studied for a diploma in addiction studies at Leeds University. She had to give up working 6 years ago after suffering from spinal fusion, and now volunteers for the Samaritans, Aspire Ride, Age UK, Isle of Wight Pride and Quor Abbey. She said, "It's all about education for me, and that's why I went to court. I want to raise awareness on behalf of the LGBTQ+ community." Sentencing Mobley, Judge Linda Sullivan QC said, "Obviously she came here for a new life and she was happy until you potentially ruined it. She has lost her peace of mind." And the final quote is from Vicky Hogan, who was the victim. "I wanted to be free and live out my retirement in peace and harmony, but he tried to destroy that. He burst my bubble."
And back to the Island Games. Swimmers clock best ever times. Isle of Wight swimmers won medals and gained best ever Island Games times during the opening 3 days in Gotland. Chloe Plater won bronze in the 400 metres medley on Monday, which she followed up with a silver in the 800 metres freestyle on Tuesday. The 16-year-old said, "I was really pleased with my 400-metre medley because I don't really do that event. To win silver in the 800 metres and to swim a big PB was great too, so I was really happy." In total, 26 PBs, that's personal bests, were achieved by Isle of Wight swimmers by Tuesday night. Luke Oakley became the fastest ever Isle of Wight Island Games swimmer in the 200 metres freestyle, finishing the race in 1 minute 53.94 seconds. Sam Tinson-Wood also gained a quickest ever time for an Isle of Wight swimmer, 23.56 seconds, in his 50-metre freestyle during the team medley. Coach Val Gard said, "I'm so proud of all of them. They've given everything. They're a young team and it bodes well for the future."
Bailiffs enforce tourism charge on Isle of Wight businesses. Bailiffs have visited island businesses to enforce the Wight Business Improvement District, which is Wight Bid, tourism levy. This is a charge which tourism businesses are obliged to pay to visit Isle of Wight to fund marketing campaigns and initiatives designed to attract more visitors. 26 businesses have refused to pay and some have been taken to court. Visit IW said it was willing to sit down with the 26 companies 9 months after the money was due and discuss it. Barry Grazier, owner of Watch House Barn and coffee shop Cows, said he felt bullied into paying the £582.40 after bailiffs confronted a staff member last Thursday. They said they would close my restaurant and put the staff out of a job. My staff member was in tears over the threats. Mr. Grazier, who has run the cafe for 20 years, said he paid the £582.40 shortly after the bailiff's visit, but insisted he would not pay the next instalment. "I have got my own advertising budget and it is successful. I don't need them to do it for me and I have no say over how the money is spent. It is a point of principle and I don't see why I should be forced into this. They told me if I paid a proportion of the £192 at the start, then they would drop the court costs. So I paid them 10p, he said. Artie Shakes in Shanklin also had a visit from bailiffs on Monday and has been ordered to pay £540. Jason Philo, who runs the pottery and milkshake shop with partner Carrie-Anne Smith and daughter Sophia Philo, said the bill would put him out of business. "I told them I haven't got it, and if they did take it, we'd be out of business. It felt like bullying, to be honest. We are in our 3rd year, and this summer will make or break for us. We're a small, struggling business," he said. Visit IW Chief Executive David Thornton said, 94% of the island's tourism and hospitality businesses paid their bills before the start of the main season. We are exceptionally grateful for their support and trust. A very small minority of operators on the island, including a few pubs in Cowes, have refused to engage with us as a matter of principle. Of over 1,000 businesses within the Wight Bid scope, just 26 have not paid their BID levy, and as with any other unpaid statutory bill, the council, as the BID's collection team, have had to refer those businesses to a debt collecting agency. Even at this final stage, I am willing to sit down with any of those 26, either collectively or on a one-to-one basis and see what we can do to bring them into our partnership.
Holiday Village Plan Concerns. Brading residents have promised to renew their fight against a holiday village plan next to protected wetlands. A well-attended public meeting was organised by Brading Town Council and the Brading Residents Action Group, BRAG, to gauge views before the Town Council considers the application at its meeting on Thursday. That is the day before the deadline for representations to be received by the Isle of Wight Council, which will make a final decision. By the middle of this week, more than 330 letters, mostly against the development, had been received by the authority. Potential development of the Marsh Farm site has had a long and checkered planning history, the meeting heard. Thousands of tons of builders' rubble and soil were tipped there after an 18-hole international golf course, hotel and clubhouse were given planning permission. Dumping took place. The site was never levelled and nothing was ever constructed on the land next to the RSPB Brading Marshes Reserve. Monday's meeting was told the golf course application remained live because a substantive start had been made on it. The latest development plans to build 60 eco-lodges, an RSPB visitor centre and a reception and health suite with car and bicycle parking and plans to landscape the area. Residents pointed to part of the site being infested with the highly invasive and difficult to eradicate Japanese knotweed and wanted full testing to be carried out on the tipped waste to ensure that it was not contaminated. Former Mayor of Brading, Councillor Marianne Sullivan, who now chairs Bembridge Parish Council, said, "This ghastly scheme left us with a lunar landscape." But she said, although the lodge's development would benefit tourism, it should not be allowed because of its effect on the area. Residents complained about the effect on the environment, erosion of the green gap between settlements, its appearance in the countryside, access for traffic, especially during the construction phase, and safety of pedestrians on the busy Carpenter's Road.
Beware of adders, says dog owner. An island woman who is urging people to be wary of adders after one killed her dog. Kate Brett lost her 13-month-old Springer Spaniel, Herbie, on Tuesday after being bitten 2 weeks ago. Herbie had collapsed during a walk in fields near Parkhurst Forest. He was treated at Green and Forster Vets in Newport, but after receiving anti-venom, he succumbed to surgical complications. "We're truly gutted. Our 4 children are devastated," said Kate from Albany Road at Newport. Kate wants to raise awareness. "We have spoken to many people who didn't realise we had adders on the island, or that adders were poisonous. People need to be wary, and if you think a dog has been bitten, then get them straight to the vet." Kate, aged 32, said, "I want to emphasise how amazing the vets have been from the minute we went down there to the minute he passed away."
MP votes against lifting public sector pay cap. Conservative Isle of Wight MP Bob Seeley was among those to oppose lifting the public sector pay cap in Parliament on Wednesday. The newly elected MP voted against an amendment put forward by Labour Shadow Home Secretary Diane Abbott, calling for the government to end the public sector pay cap and give the emergency and public services a fair pay rise. Speaking about the heroism of the emergency services during the recent terror attacks and the Grenfell Tower fire, She added, "It is one thing for honourable members to praise public service workers for their bravery, heroism and effectiveness at times of national emergency, but we need to treat public service workers fairly every other day of the year." Labour's Island election candidate Julian Critchley said, "During the campaign, Bob Seeley made it clear he supported greater public investment. So it saddens me he has rejected the very first opportunity to end the assault on the pay and spending power of all the public sector workers on the island. We're all poorer as a result of this chaotic shambles of government." Mr. Seeley said, "Public sector workers do a really important job, and the issue of public sector pay needs to be looked at properly. But rather than tacking it on to the end of the Queen's speech at the last minute, it needs to be reviewed by the Treasury ahead of the budget this autumn. Of course, we need to support public sector workers, but we need to find ways of doing so that ensures the economy keeps on growing. Without that growth, we won't have the money our nation needs to pay for these public services." The amendment was defeated by just 14 votes, with the Conservatives and DUP voting against it.
And our interest in Mr. Seeley's reactions to plans continues, as Seeley's challenge to plan perplexing. A decision by the island's new MP, Councillor Bob Seeley, to call in a planning application in Rookley prompted a puzzled reaction by long-standing member Councillor Paul Fuller. The application to knock down an existing garage and stores and build a new garage at Pidford Manor, Main Road, was challenged by Councillor Seeley on the grounds the proposed new building was disproportionate in scale and would have an adverse impact on neighbouring properties. Councillor Fuller said, "I am perplexed why this application is before the committee." Councillor Seeley was not at the meeting on Tuesday. Members approved the application.
St Mary's will be checked for fire safety. St Mary's Hospital will review its buildings following the Grenfell Tower fire. The Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service will help the NHS Trust assess the site and other Trust-owned buildings to make sure its cladding is fit for purpose. The Grenfell fire earlier this month killed at least 80 people. The Isle of Wight NHS Trust said there was no reason to be worried, but full checks would be carried out on its buildings across the island. John Burwell, Trust Executive Director for Strategy and Planning, said, "Following the tragic events at Grenfell Tower and the instruction to the NHS to review fire safety, we have asked for the support of the Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service to review property owned by Isle of Wight NHS Trust, including St Mary's Hospital. We have no reason to believe at this stage that there is anything to worry about. However, it is important we get this view independently tested, which will include assessing the cladding at the St Mary's site. We have upgraded our fire safety processes and systems over the years. This includes upgrading fire compartments within the hospital to reduce the likelihood of a fire spreading rapidly throughout the hospital. We have a system of fire wardens, regular drills are held, all staff are expected to understand routine fire safety awareness training, and there are multiple exits across all buildings."
And continuing my planning theme, there's a new plan for Wight City. A fresh application to redevelop Sandown Seafront's disused Wight City has been warmly welcomed by the Isle of Wight Council member for the area. Councillor Ian Ward said, "This is part of Sandown being very much on the up. Confidence of potential investors in Sandown has been boosted by the plans for Sandham Gardens, the new seafront Premier Inn and now a developer lodging fresh plans for Wight City. I cannot see much difference between the latest plans and the permission granted some years ago. There are 46 flats in this proposal, a restaurant and a retail space. I very much welcome it, and I think the message has got through to Sandown too. If we make life difficult for potential investors, there are plenty of others that can take their money. The proposal would see demolition of the amusement arcade, which closed in November 2012, the former Colonel Bogey's nightclub, the Jolly Sailor bar, and the existing apartments above.
Care home owners' charges dropped. A prosecution against owners of a Ryde care home has been dropped partway through a trial. Keith and Jennifer Betterley, the proprietors of Fallowfields Care Home, went on trial for 2 counts of health and safety breaches following an incident in March 2015 in which a resident fell to his death, having walked unnoticed through a fire exit. But the charges brought by the Isle of Wight Council have been dropped. Mr. Betterley said, "After 2 years, we are relieved that the criminal process has come to a conclusion. The support our staff, our clients and their families have given us has been overwhelming during this period. Our thoughts remain with the family, and we pass our deepest condolences to them. We are now reflecting on the evidence given during the course of the trial, and in particular in relation to the manner in which the investigation has been brought by the Isle of Wight Council and their conduct, which we have always had grave concerns with." A council spokesperson said, "During the hearing, fresh evidence was produced, which led the council to review its position and ultimately to determine that, in line with the Crown Prosecution Service Code, it was no longer appropriate to proceed."
Now a bit of romance. Michael declares love on the ocean wave. Romance blossomed on the Solent last week. Wight Link St Clair Car Ferry played Cupid for 2 members of Ryde Inshore Rescue. That's the RIR. Michael Singer knew his girlfriend Dominique Singleton would be on board the 5 p.m. sailing from Portsmouth to Fishbourne on Thursday, July the 22nd. Michael and Dominique are both crew members, and Michael persuaded fellow members to join him on the rescue boat and help unfurl a banner asking her to marry him. Tipped off in advance, Wight Link captain Sam Mitchell made an excuse to invite Dominique up to the bridge to get a good view of the banner. He then allowed her to use the ship's radio to give Michael her answer, which was yes. RIR chair Addie Farrell said Dominique and Michael met through volunteering at Ryde Inshore Rescue. For us, this was Operation Shush. Everyone knew that Michael was planning, but we all had to keep it a secret. From the look on her face, it's clear she had no idea. Dominique said, "I'm still shaking in shock. Who'd have thought by joining Ryde Inshore Rescue I'd meet my future husband? All the effort my lifeboat family and Wight Link put in today was beyond what I had ever imagined. I'm forever grateful to every single one of you. I'm the luckiest person in the world right now. Michael Singer, I love you." Michael, a paramedic, told the county press it had been a 3-month operation. He said, "It was hard because I'm terrible with secrets. We have a friend who wants to join the Navy and had to go to the mainland for a medical, so I told her to take Dominique as a way to get her off the island. When I got on board the boat, it wasn't too bad, although I was a bit nervous in case we were called away for work, since we were still on active duty." He added, "When I met her, I knew she was someone I wanted to get to know, but I thought she was out of my league."
And that's all we have time for, so it's goodbye from Sonora.
And it's goodbye from Mike. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Good morning, everyone. This is the County Press, and this is Barry.
And this is Pauline.
And we start with a letter from Ian Hall of Thorley. He says, I found myself recently at the mercy of the elements when attempting to return from London to the Isle of Wight in the eye of a storm. With the hovercraft cancelled, I got the last catamaran off the mainland, with the captain announcing to the few hardy souls on board it was pretty hairy in the Solent, but he was going to make a go of it. We bounced on in what was, without doubt, the worst crossing of my 5 years as a resident. At that moment it occurred to me it was like June the 5th. 73 years ago, thousands of men were enduring a similar crossing, setting off from points across the south to take part in what will be forever known as D-Day, the invasion of Normandy, which commenced the next day. The conditions were, history tells us, equally bad, and they had to cross the Channel, and not just a couple of miles of the Solent. Some 80% on board the craft suffered terrible seasickness, having been on the ship for days waiting for a break in the weather. That was before diving chest deep into freezing waters, carrying their equipment, while all the time being shelled at and shot at. Scared, wet, sick, wounded, and with terrible casualties, they pushed on undaunted. They pushed on to say no to oppression and tyranny, to reclaim lands that had been stolen, and at a terrible cost attempt to bring an end to the war. We can debate all day about using force to stop threats and bring peace, from armed police on the streets to armed forces everywhere in the world. But what brings the public together, every time, is when individuals or groups believe they can force their views and opinions on the masses through violence and aggression. We stand alongside the tragic events in Manchester, London, Paris, Brussels, Nice, and many other cities in mutual grief and mutual solidarity. That gave me great comfort as I catapulted across the seas that night. It made me grateful for the sacrifices thousands of men and women made 70 years ago, and have continued to do so ever since. Today, terrorism should make us determined not to forget their legacy and what they fought and died for.
And now a letter from Malcolm Wade of St Helens. I sometimes wish I was not an avid reader of the County Press. Last week I read the headline, Braiding Marsh Holiday Lodges Back on the Table. The 60 holiday lodges N Plan wants to build on the Marsh Farm site will not address the needs of young families in our village who are badly in need of affordable accommodation. N Plan also plan other buildings, including a visitor centre for the RSPB. Unfortunately, the RSPB policy on the adjacent nature reserve has been to manage the reserve for a certain category of bird life, mainly lapwings. As a result, the Marsh Farm site, after the dumping of inert soil ceased, has become a haven for displaced birds, such as whitethroats, meadow pipits, reed buntings, linnets, grasshopper warblers, blackcaps, and most recently nesting there, the Sette's warbler. Many small animals also thrive in the scrubland. The character of our two villages, Brading and St Helens, exists because of the green corridor, known as Marsh Farm, that separates us. So we should be wary of any development that could be the thin end of the wedge that starts ribbon development between Brading and St Helens. The strategic gap must be maintained.
And a letter from L. Thompson of Brystone. Is this really eco-energy? The economics of harvesting crops for energy production seem to be marginal. The seasonal domination of our roads and lanes with massive tractors and trailers is a real hazard. As a frequent user of Elm Lane, Colburn, I've had to take to the verge on more than one occasion when confronted by an unyielding behemoth. As the multiple skid marks indicate, I am not the only one. The cost in diesel fuel alone for transporting and harvesting the vegetation must equal, if not exceed, the value of the energy produced. It is likely that without the subsidy which comes from us, the customers, the whole effort is not worth the inconvenience to the island.
This is from Henry Fall Walker, Chief Executive, NewsQuest Media Group. We fully understand any potential change of a company's ownership causes concern for employees and wider stakeholders, but it's our unequivocal view that a purchase of the Isle of Wight County Press by NewsQuest will ensure the newspaper will continue to thrive on the island for many more years to come. NewsQuest is the only major publisher in the UK that specialises in just running regional rather than national newspapers, and has a track record of strong newspaper sales and strong digital audiences compared to the industry. Its commitment to the sector includes a bespoke staff training centre in Southampton to equip staff for the digital environment, and it has the scale to secure cost savings in raw materials and printing that are not available to the county press. When others have been closing newspapers, we have been able to launch them. In the last 6 months alone, we've launched the 8 new local papers for local communities. Some might wish for a world where we could turn back the clock, disinvent the internet and eradicate the digital behemoths of Google and Facebook that has done so much to disrupt the newspaper business. The reality is that it has become challenging for local newspapers to navigate their way through the increasingly difficult economic environment of print newspaper publishing, and particularly for those operating on a small scale. Through NewsQuest, the county press and its staff will be able to access much deeper digital systems, printing, training and content resources than they could afford on their own. This will put the newspaper on a much stronger footing to cope with the economic challenges it faces. As an operator of community newspapers, NewsQuest operates with local management, supports local editorial freedom, believes in the importance of local reporters and sales staff being out and about in the community, and supports the community through the Gannett Charitable Foundation. We look forward to continuing to support and invest in the great editorial content and first-class reporting the county press represents.
And from Alan Stone, Yarmouth, evidence is there. My heart sank when I read the US-owned NewsQuest group were set to take over the county press. The company has a terrible reputation for slashing costs, disinvesting in quality journalism and eliminating experienced staff from newsrooms. Google the Guardian's media analyst Roy Greenslade for the evidence. Look no farther than the Brighton Argus to see how they've wrecked the circulation of that once great paper, its sales plunging in recent years faster than any comparable regional daily.
And from Pauline Martin of Newport, I would like to say a big thank you to the couple who last week found my purse at Firestone Copse. I placed it on the roof of my car while giving my dogs a drink before driving home. The lady and gentleman must have seen the purse fall from the roof as I drove off. They then took the trouble to find my address, drive to my house and reunite me with my purse before I realised it was missing. Many, many thanks for literally going the extra mile.
And not quite so merry when only 12 attended a performance from Mary Bolshin of Hampshire. We booked 4 tickets for an open-air production of The Merry Wives of Windsor, Shakespeare, by the Festival Players Theatre Company at Ventnor Botanic Gardens on Saturday. Imagine our amazement when we found an audience of only 12, including the play's director. It was an excellent production, and we felt privileged to have had our own private performance. But where were the Ventnor folk and the other supporters from the Isle of Wight? I am saddened such a talented group of actors, 6 took on all the roles, did not have an audience. They must have made huge loss on this event, with ferry and accommodation costs taken into account. I suspect it was all down to lack of publicity. It was difficult to find the advert, as it was not given priority on the home page of Ventnor Botanic Gardens website, and not easy to book. No ads, flyers seen anywhere in the locality. I would have expected a banner outside the Botanical Gardens highlighting the production. We were over for a few days on the island, so searched for June the 24th events on the web, and that was how we found it, and were joined by some Isle of Wight friends. The festive players tour for 3.5 months during the summer, both in the UK and Europe, with several private invitations to perform. It was too good a performance to be missed, and I hope they will return. Our thanks to the enterprising lady running the cafe, who suggested we eat our picnic on the balcony, provided rugs and supplied everyone with hot drinks at the interval. She was brilliant.
From Jill Evans of Wroxall, wonderful wasps. Richard Wright, County Press gardening page, 23rd of June, said the big negative of the summertime is the wasp season. I disagree. Wasps can be pesky, but they're only looking for food after caring for the queen and have some free time. A drop of jam or such like away from the house will often keep them at bay. Wasps do so much good by eating aphids and keeping the balance of nature. In time they will leave their nest, which is an absolute work of art. I feel sorry for them. Live and let live.
Now we have looking back. 100 years ago, June the 30th, 1917, the high price of coal on the island continued to cause problems despite numerous protests from the MP Douglas Hall. Shipping over the Solent was driving up costs, but a letter from the coal controller and Ministry of Shipping made it clear that it was impossible to reduce the price of coal on the island. A Cowes soldier was fined 10 shillings, £125 in today's money, for claiming to be German when arriving at Southampton by boat. When he was told it caused a lot of inconvenience to the 250 passengers, he said, "I did it for a joke. One of my mates told me to." The soldier said he thought the policeman who asked where he was from knew him.
75 years ago, on June the 27th, 1942, a lorry backfire caused a quarter of a hayrick to go up in smoke at Northwood Park Dairy. The lorry was pulled away from the blaze by a fire engine and was only slightly damaged, but the rick had to be pulled to pieces and was ruined before the fire was extinguished. Gardeners were warned to look out for colonies of tree-devouring caterpillars which had been sighted on St Boniface Down. The small, dark-spotted creatures were the larvae of the small ermine moth and could completely ruin the fruit harvest for several years if they were allowed to strip the trees of leaves.
And 50 years ago, July the 1st, 1967, hovercraft fever continued to grip the island. 20 homemade hovercrafts built by keen amateurs in backyards, businesses and garages were put through their paces in the first National Hovercraft Rally held on the Isle of Wight. Crowds braved thunder, fog and torrential rain to watch the craft battle it out for one of the 3 major trophies. And as SRN-6 hovercraft, in which Earl Mountbatten travelled from Southampton, stalled in mid-Solent, a spokesman for Sea Speed said the engine soon picked up again and the governor was only a few minutes late arriving in Cowes. Commenting on the incident, Earl Mountbatten said it demonstrated to him how well the craft could recover. Had the mishap occurred in an aircraft, he would have been killed.
25 years ago, June the 26th, 1992, Ireland MP Barry Field was preparing to take his £40,000, that's £75,966 in today's money, boat to sea in support of the fishermen's blockade of the Alf Oil Company's seismic survey ship. Mr. Field was reacting angrily to news Alf Enterprise representatives had failed to reach a compensation agreement with island commercial fishermen, who claimed the oil search off the West Wight had depleted local fish stocks. A Ryde builder was fighting Medina and South Wight Borough Council's decision to evict him and his family from their home in a converted byre which straddled the borough boundary at Brading Road Ryde. The home was in contravention of planning policy. The owner said he had been offered £600,000, that's £1,139,494 in today's money, for his 24-acre site, but had declined, saying the land was part of his heritage and would be left for his children and grandchildren.
And 10 years ago, June the 29th, 2007, with the smoking ban looming, pub licensees were airing their concerns about the possible effect it could have on business. Mike and Heather Janvrin of the Volunteer Venter said they were unsure how the ban would impact trade. "We know there are pubs that have closed in Scotland and Ireland where they have already had the ban, but we do not know if they would have closed down anyway. It has been a hard winter for pubs," said Mrs. Janvrin.
And also 10 years ago, as Tony Blair's decade as Prime Minister came to an end, one prankster, keen to make his views known, put him out to grass, quite literally. 2 scarecrow-style effigies of Mr. Blair, surrounded with highly colourful placards declaring him as a phony and exclaiming B.S. to Blair, appeared overnight at Arreton Cross in a field near the Merston turnoff. providing an interesting distraction for the morning traffic. And now we have the Wight memories.
Campaign to commemorate Palestine's old comrades. Derek Kent may be a very old soldier, but age has not withered his campaigning verve. Derek, 89, from Green Lane Lake, points to the fact that despite losing twice as many servicemen in the Palestinian conflict compared to the Falklands campaign, there is no commemoration day on the calendar or memorial stone to record the sacrifice of his comrades. Like many others called up in the Second World War, he said, when the end came in 1945, we thought we would be going home, but oh no, we found ourselves in Palestine, where the very people we had liberated in Europe were killing comrades, shooting them, blowing them up and hanging them, Derek said. Sergeants Mervyn Price and Clifford Martin were both hanged on July the 30th, 1947, and their bodies were booby-trapped, injuring those who cut them down. They had been kidnapped, tortured and hanged. In total, 784 of our comrades were killed in this conflict, and we have never so much as had the word sorry from Israel. Menachem Begin was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize and became the Prime Minister of Israel. He also signed the death warrants of the 252 Intelligence Corps sergeants. Those killed in Palestine deserve to be remembered. What better time for it to be announced than on the 70th anniversary of the hanging of the two sergeants? Derek, who carried intelligence dispatches as a motorcycle rider during his service, has been to Ramallah to pay his personal respects to the colleagues he lost.
And now out on the delivery round with Dad. Brading Parish Councillor Richard Whiting, in his second reflection on the 50th anniversary of the death of his father, casts his mind back to when common sense and not health and safety rules prevailed. Richard's father, Ronald, died at the age of just 47, but not before leaving behind vivid memories of drives together in the Vectis Shipping Sedan lorry, with Richard perched on the passenger seat. Richard remembers roaming freely the Brickwoods depot in Orchard Street, and still has gifts of a Brickwoods ashtray and Guinness penknife to prove it. Rookley Brickworks was a haunt during collections, and the smells of the resins, gel coats and varnishes wafted over him at Saunders Row at East Cowes. He recalls having to stand outside Parkhurst Prison, leaning against the wall while his father delivered within. As promised by the on-duty prison officer, he regularly opened the big gates to check I was okay. Another event that would not be allowed today, said Richard. He remembers as a small lad one special winter evening when the family went to a show organised by the firm on Sandown Pier. I can clearly remember holding my father's hand and my sisters holding my mother's. It was a pitch dark, starry, cold night, and my first recollection of being out in darkness, he recalls.
Now we have the secrets beneath the red paint of this postbox. That first-class fount of postal heritage knowledge, Arthur Reeder, threw into focus the fact a recent road crash at Apps Heath Post Office very nearly wiped out a rare piece of street furniture. The pillar box there is among just 180 of its type surviving in the United Kingdom, producing specifically for posting airmail letters in the 1930s. The idea was that mail could be sent for quicker by air than sea, and those who could afford the additional cost would then post their suitably stamped mail in these stunningly blue-coloured post boxes. The mail was then collected by special blue-coloured post office vans. As a sort of publicity drive, it was a great success, so much so that by 1938 the requirement for separating the mail was redundant, and mail could all be posted in the normal boxes. Needless to say, this left some 300-odd specially produced pillar boxes as spares. What happened then was that the Royal Mail stored them until a new box was required. The box had its special airmail plates and twin-time plate holders removed. It was painted red and then sent back out on the street without anyone being any the wiser. These special boxes were concentrated in all the major cities throughout the UK, but I doubt any would have been required on the island, said Arthur. However, As part of the post-war house building boom, new pillar boxes will be needed across the country, and these ex-airmail boxes fitted the bill. We actually have 3 on the island on the street. There is the Apps Heath one, another at Binstead Post Office, and a third just round the corner in King's Road. When the paint gets chipped off and before a repaint, sometimes evidence of the old blue colours can be seen, as in Apps Heath, picture above. This particular box showed signs of both the original light blue and a very short-lived repaint into a darker blue that lasted little more than 12 months. At his museum in Newport, Arthur has another fully restored airmail box showing how striking they looked when new.
Now we have My View, and this is by Catherine James. 6 Degrees of Jonathan Bacon. Shortly before I moved to the Isle of Wight in 1990, I went to a house party in Portsmouth. It was heaving with the usual crowd of art students, sundry hair-hopping weirdos and proto-hippies. I spent some time chatting with a chap who differentiated himself from the herd by having cultivated a Dali-esque moustache. The next day I saw him in the street. Preparing myself to respond to his cheery hello, I was crushed when he blanked me. Was he still pie-eyed from the night before, or was this a symptom of big city living? Conversely, within weeks of getting my one-way ticket across the Solent, a lady collared me as we queued at a till. Her opener was, "Where do I know you from?" I couldn't say, having only just arrived on these shores. "Where did you go to school?" I explained that I wasn't from these parts. "Your sister, then. Perhaps I know your sister." "I don't have a sister." This insistent probing went on for some time until she finally admitted defeat. It was at this moment that I was introduced into one of the joys of the Isle of Wight, people's eagerness to have a link with you, however tenuous. It took me years to shake off the inability to look strangers in the eye. But nowadays, wherever I go, I scan the crowds for a familiar face. On the island, this can mean a walk to the proverbial post office can take twice as long as budgeted for, and social media has made connections even more likely. While some people follow celebrities for inconsequential tidbits, my virtual gang include a bunch of locals, many whom I have got to know IRL, in the real life. Just before the recent general election, I attended a hustings event. People milled about outside Cowes Enterprise College, and chatting to a veteran journo and his pal, I discovered they were playing the same game my boyfriend and I occupy ourselves with at busy events like the Old Gaffers and the County Show. That is to say, how many attendees do we know? It can get quite competitive, with bonus points awarded for the first spot and a double score for anyone we know wearing a hat. Last month we went to see, Trilby Sporting, Count Arthur Strong at Shanklin Theatre, and I popped in the box office to collect the tickets. They weren't booked under my name, so I tried my boyfriend's. "Oh yes," said the lady in the kiosk, "here you go." She scrutinised the name on the envelope, declaring, "He bought a house from me in 1999. And yes, I do know Jonathan Bacon.
And why DNA is now the key to BMDs, from Jim Gibbons. We are all aware of the registers of births, marriages and deaths, and the obligations laid on us to report these occurrences to the state. These registers and regulations have been in force for hundreds of years, but unless you have reason to consider the matter, you probably have little idea how badly, how disconnectedly they are run. There is no automatic checking between the registers at all. Nobody and no machine checks that each person who is born has died or each who dies has been registered as born. You might naively suppose the registrars of marriages would check that blushing brides, grooms are in fact single, and you would be wrong. There is no easy way for a man or woman to verify the proposed partner is not married already, perhaps 20 years previously, or living a double or triple life. And as famously described in Forsyth's The Day of the Jackal, a person can find someone who died young and get a passport in his name, as no one checks that someone born is still alive. Partly this has not been done because, I would guess, there is no register of incomers and outgoers, immigrants or visitors, and many because many visitors might be here for only a few days. It has never been practical to keep the full records of everyone in the country. Well, it is now the computer age, and it is possible. The government already keeps many separate records of all of us in many different ways, and does very little checking. Think of NI numbers, NHS numbers, unique tax reference numbers. I imagine no one knows how many lists there are. Think of the advantages of each person's record, including his DNA and possibly fingerprints, quicker identification of dead bodies, much reduced and quicker detected national insurance fraud, deterrence and quicker detection of illegal immigration and potential terrorism. Only one reference number needed instead of many for each person. Easier detection and location of men who father children and refuse to support them. The key to all of it all is DNA. It could have been done 100 years ago with fingerprints, but without computers for storage, the cost would have been enormous. The cost today of doing it right should be little more than the cost we now incur in doing it wrong. The disadvantages? Of course there are difficulties. Although it is easy to take a sample of DNA, it is a lot slower and more expensive to convert it to number for filing or to compare it with another DNA sample. Fingerprints are easier to record and compare, as are retinal photographs, and it may be we will have to rely on those individuals, although they do not provide genetic information. And the initial recording of data would clearly be a massive task, though we could start with new entries, that is babies and people from abroad, followed by people claiming benefits and pensions. We would not get the full benefits for a long time, but we would be no worse off than we are now. I'll volunteer to start it off.
And now restored to royal glory. The garden terrace where Queen Victoria sat and painted watercolours is open to the public for the first time, thanks to help from several island families and Isle of Wight College students. The £60,000 restoration project will allow visitors into the terrace of Osborne House, with panoramic views stretching out across the Solent, which Prince Albert compared to the Bay of Naples. The centrepiece of the terrace is the Andromeda fountain, bought by Queen Victoria during the 1851 Great Exhibition, which has been painstakingly restored to working order. English Heritage Properties curator Samantha Stone said, "Queen Victoria loved to be outside in the fresh sea air, and the terrace was a place of peace." Our conservation project now reinstates Albert's original vision of Osborne. At the opening of the terrace on Tuesday, certificates were presented to students from the Isle of Wight College who carried out work experience with CRL Restoration, the main conservation specialist. Several local families also worked on the project, including Newman Berry Decorators, a father and son team, who painted the terraces the iconic golden yellow. The Dinsdale family from Ventnor, consisting of father, 3 sons, the wife of one of the sons and 2 cousins, all worked on the site. Son, Jamie Dinsdale, said, "We were just general builders, stonemasons and plasterers, and we brought all our skills to the job. We also had to learn new skills, so this was a big learning curve." His father, Paul Dinsdale, added, "It feels like a dream come true, especially being local. I can bring my grandchildren here and say I did that." Site manager Patrick Smythe said, "I know Queen Victoria would be happy to sit and have tea here, as our visitors will in the weeks and months ahead."
Now we have some details of events in the future. Contemplation and choral music. The Brothers of Core Abbey are inviting people to join them for an hour of cool reflection while listening to the calming ethereal tones of Camerata Chamber Choir. The stunning acoustic of the Abbey Church will perfectly complement the programme of sacred choral and organ music next Saturday, July the 8th at 3 p.m. The organ has recently been refurbished and is admired by organists around the country. Entry is free, with a retiring collection for the work and upkeep of the Abbey.
We have a musical evening to celebrate NHS. The fantastic work of the NHS will be celebrated at a special event. Key Arts Newport will host a 69-year celebration for the health service on July the 4th. The musical evening will feature the Nightingales NHS Choir, Ride Ukulele Group and return of Penguin Brolly. There will also be cakes, refreshments and guest speakers. It runs from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. and entry is free. The event has been organised by Islanders Bridget Tuck, Maria Villas and Christine Lightbody, who all want to celebrate and recognise the work undertaken by the health service and its staff. Additional support has come from Paul Armfield at Key Arts and Mark Chiverton, who has organised sponsorship from Unison.
And we have some events a little further on in the summer, beginning of autumn. Imagination featuring Lee John, Saturday the 16th of September, now booking at the Shanklin Theatre. Also Andy Parsons, Saturday the 30th September, and Jimmy Owen, Friday the 3rd of November, Rich Hall, Saturday 11th of November, and Sarah Millican, Saturday the 5th of May 2018.
And at the Apollo Theatre, Pyle Street, Newport, we have the Apollo Players presenting The Ghost Train by Arnold Ridley. This runs from today, Friday the 30th of June, till Saturday the 8th of July. There's no shows on Sunday or Monday, and they start at 7:30 p.m.
We have a little article here, Romans and Their Plants by James Walden. Ventnor botanical artists held an exhibition at Brading Roman Villa, where they displayed paintings of plants that would have been known to the Romans. The group's Sally Wibley said, because of the location, we wanted to highlight plants the Romans would have known, used or introduced into Britain. They tended to have a routine whereby plants were used for culinary, decorative, ritual, medicinal or utilitarian purposes. Obviously, for plants that were intended to be eaten, for food or medicine, identification was of prime importance. Differentiating between a daffodil bulb and an onion could be a life or death decision, said Sally. Roman writers Pliny, Cicero, Juvenal and Virgil would record occasions when various plants were used for what purpose. Today we no longer need to produce these botanically correct pictures, but the result is pleasing, decorative, informative, and hopefully made such an impact on the observer they wanted to take it home with them. The exhibition finished on Wednesday.
Events that are coming up at Medina Theatre. So on Thursday the 13th of July at 7:30 we have the Medina Community Choir and it presents Royals. The Little Mix Experience are on Friday the 1st of September, 6 p.m. The James Taylor Quartet, Saturday 16th of September at 7:30 p.m. The Whitney Houston Show, Friday 22nd of September, 7:30 p.m. Now we have Dodgy with support from Bobby I Can Fly, Saturday 23rd of September at 7:30. T-Rex on Friday the 29th of September at 7:30. The 3 Degrees plus support, Sunday 1st of October. Money for Nothing, that's a tribute to Dire Straits on Friday the 6th of October 7:30. And the Opera Boys, Saturday 7th of October, again at 7:30.
And students from Christ the King Art Department are getting involved with one of the Ireland's largest volunteer heritage projects at Northwood Cemetery, Cowes. The £1.6 million scheme, paid for by the Heritage Lottery Fund and the Big Lottery Fund, has already seen the rescue of 2 collapsing Victorian chapels, the creation of the island's first municipal national burial ground, and an exciting programme of memorial restoration and conservation activities. Last Friday, June the 23rd, Year 7 photography students, armed with their cameras and dressed in Victorian costume, took photographs in the cemetery to record the heritage and conservation value of the site for future generations. They will mount an exhibition of their pictures at the official opening planned for October. Adam Brown, head of art, said he was delighted to see the students getting a chance to try out their developing photography skills on a project that will have a lasting community impact. And we have advertisement for a concert by Varvara Mags, Sunday, August the 6th, 7 p.m, including music from Tchaikovsky, Rachmaninoff and Mussorgsky at the Newport Theatre, Newport Minster.
That's the end of what's on. A couple of little letters that we missed earlier on. One from Ron Baker of Tottenham Bay, and he says, our government is to keep the foreign aid programme, but suspected abuse of the system also remains. So why not give goods instead of money to the poorer countries? They could be contacted about their most pressing needs. We could pay UK companies to supply those goods. Farming gear, medical supplies, food, clean water equipment, building materials, solar power kit, all comes to mind as useful. We could pay British Red Cross or other reputable bodies to transport and distribute these items. It would help the charity's cost and finances, as well as supporting UK companies, which helps them grow and may provide more jobs. It would also appease the Charity Begins at Home Brigade. We would be a world leader in this mission and very popular with poorer nations. I hope our government takes up these radical ideas to make it a win-win situation. So it's UK all the way. We're worth it.
Jane cooks up meal for TV chef Phil. This morning's stars, Phil Vickery and Alison Hammond, have been filming on the Isle of Wight. The chef and presenter were filming for the show at Nodes Point on Monday and popped into the Yard Bridge Inn for a bite to eat. Becky Fox, who works as front of house at her family's pub, said, "My mum Jane was so over the moon and nervous to cook for Phil. This morning is her favourite show, and she adores Phil, so it was a real honour for her to cook for him. She went to bed with a big smile on her face." Jane served up a meal of grilled Isle of Wight turbot from Captain Stan's Bembridge in a cream sauce on a bed of crushed new potatoes with Isle of Wight cherry tomatoes and vegetables. The Fox family have run the Yard Bridge Inn for almost 7 years.
And B. Green of Freshwater says, MP's pledge. Our newly elected MP Bob Seeley has a perfect chance to make his mark. The Isle of Wight has very individual and specific problems based on much underinvestment over many years. With the discovery of a magic money tree, Mr Seeley could withhold his support for the Queen's speech unless £100 million, the going rate per vote at the moment for maintaining a minority government, is pumped into the Isle of Wight economy over the next 2 years. This would enable Mr Seeley to fulfil his post-election pledge to continue to champion it, that's the Isle of Wight, with the tenacity it deserves. We shall see.
And Sinking Feeling as Boat Takes on Water by James Wolven. A houseboat in Bembridge Harbour sunk, inverted commas, this week, despite the efforts of firefighters and coastguards. The boat, Fairmile-C, began taking on water after a pump failed sometime after Monday, according to the owner, Aidan de la Mare. Firefighters and a team from Bembridge Coast Guard attended to assist in pumping water out of the vessel, but it became clear the boat was taking on water faster than it could be pumped out. Mr de la Mare of Baskets Lane, Yarmouth, said the water reached a point where it was coming in too fast over the top of the waterline for the pump to pull it out. We tried calling in the fire and rescue service in the hope they could pump the water out faster, but that didn't work. So we let it sink to the bottom. Below deck, it is about knee-deep in water. There are no signs of pollution and no risk to life. Aidan bought the boat in March and was hoping to move into Fairmile-C with his wife Ruth in the near future, so he began slowly to move in personal belongings. The 76-year-old said a lot of items stored on the bottom level of the boat would no longer be usable, including a fridge, washing machine and lots of books and personal papers. After letting the boat sink to the bottom, Aidan said the plan was to wait for the tide to go out, pump out the remaining water and hope the boat would refloat when the tide came in. Aidan said, "There is no point feeling frustrated. One often worries about the small things in life, and yet even though this is a big thing, there is still no point worrying. It won't change what is happening."
New riding centre praised by athlete. Paralympic wheelchair basketball star Ade Adepitan and his partner rising singer LX have opened the Island Riding Centre. The couple opened the centre's new all-weather outdoor arena on Staplers Road, Newport, when Elle was performing at the Isle of Wight Festival 2 weeks ago. Ade is well known for presenting on the BBC and Channel 4, including the travel show and coverage of the Paralympic Games. The riding centre, which will open for lessons next month, aims to encourage riders of all abilities, including those with physical limitations, to participate when its indoor arena is completed later this year. Ade, an ambassador and patron for charities supporting wheelchair users, children and sport, and was introduced to the Island Riding Centre by Jan Brooks of Isle Access, which promotes greater accessibility for visitors and residents on the Isle of Wight. Ade said, "We had a wonderful time at the Island Riding Centre. It was so cool to stay at a place that is not only beautiful but also has accessibility at the heart of its thinking. Knowing the accommodation was created to cater for everybody, able-bodied and disabled, was a breath of fresh air. I've always believed that it's not disability that holds people back, it's lack of accessibility. So learning to ride horses in an environment free from the barriers people with disabilities normally face in everyday life will be a massive, life-changing and empowering experience.
And Isle of Wight School was one of the victims of the latest global cyber attack, which is similar to one last month, in which people were locked out of their data and told to pay a ransom to re-establish access. The council emailed all schools to warn them of the development. In its email, the council said the attack had led to considerable disruption, cost and data loss. In a separate statement, a spokesman said the council was not an IT provider to schools, and schools bought in their own IT contracts and should follow the advice given by their own providers.
2 sheep have been killed and 3 others injured following a suspected dog attack at a field behind Taylor Road in Gunville. Part-time shepherd Neil Robinson of Seaview said when he left the sheep at 5 p.m. on Sunday, June the 18th, they were fine. However, when he returned a few hours later, 2 were dead and 3 others badly injured. It appeared the sheep had been worried by a dog or dogs. Worrying includes attacking or chasing sheep, and in some circumstances, farmers are legally entitled to shoot dogs if they are endangering their livestock. Chasing by dogs can do serious damage to sheep, and the stress of worrying by dogs can cause sheep to die or miscarry. Mr. Robinson said dogs must have grabbed the legs and the thighs. Hopefully the ones who are injured will eventually make a full recovery. Although Mr. Robinson owns a flock of 180 sheep, the ones killed were at Kerry Hills, a rare breed of which he had only half a dozen. The police confirmed no arrests had been made, although they encouraged dog owners to be aware of their dogs at all times when walking in rural areas, particularly around livestock.
And rather a nice piece of information here, the island community has rallied to raise money for a teenager who was seriously assaulted in Lake. Callum Finnis, 17, suffered a broken nose, jaw and eye socket following the attack early this month and was admitted to St Mary's Hospital for treatment. A crowd-funding page has been launched to send the teenager on a special holiday to help him recover from the ordeal. The page states, let's crowd fund and send him on a really nice holiday so his faith in society is restored. No one deserves to be beaten up. So far, £135 has been raised towards the £1,000 target.
A new shelter costing £26,500 is to be officially opened on Cowes seafront by the town's former mayor, Councillor Jeff Banks. That's tomorrow, Saturday. In May 2010, Councillor Banks put forward the proposal to Cowes Town Council for the shelter to be built on Egypt Esplanade. However, the task of getting the shelter built did not prove to be easy. The midway groin close to where the shelter was due to be sited happened to be over a major gas line from across the Solent. The licences for it to be built stipulated it should be a temporary structure that was readily removable, so the shelter was made out of oak and built elsewhere before being lifted in position by a crane. Since being installed in April, it has been well received by people taking the popular stroll along the seafront. The cost included a grant of £9,196 from the Isle of Wight Council.
Man rescued by a quick-thinking kayaker. A search and rescue helicopter was called out to Ventnor after the Coast Guard received a series of calls from concerned beachgoers who spotted a kayaker in difficulty. The kayaker had anchored around 200 metres offshore to fish, but as the tide came in and the water rose, the kayak was dragged underwater, a Coast Guard spokesman said. Philip Dingsdale, a Merseyside holidaymaker who witnessed Monday's incident, said, "We heard the man shouting for help as his boat sank. People around us also heard, and we all shouted back to reassure him. A quick-thinking second kayaker launched from Ventnor Beach in a 2-seater kayak to assist, but the man had started drifting further out to sea," Mr. Dingsdale said. When the second kayak reached the man, it capsized as he tried to climb in. The pair righted the kayak and managed to climb in and paddle back to shore. The helicopter arrived on the scene, but was stood down as the men landed safely at the beach. and were met by Ventnor Coast Guard rescue team. And on that very nice note, I hope you have a very nice weekend. It's cheerio from Barry for now.
And goodbye from Pauline.
This is a download from the BBC. For more information and our terms of use, go to www.bbc.co.uk/in touch. Tonight, facing retirement, we'll be hearing from a man who thinks it poses different challenges when you're visually impaired. And in a moment, he'll be telling us why. And to make sure she reaches retirement, Emma Tracy has been learning to defend herself.
Back away, leave me alone.
Help if you're actually holding this cane up there showing people, because when it was folded in,
Yeah.
nobody could see it. It was
Right.
just you and him.
So it's
close.
kind of up at my face.
So if
high-
you're holding it
my head
up,
high.
people can see there's a cane.
More from Emma later. But first, Mike Kelly is a civil servant, at least until next week. But he recently got in touch with us looking for advice from other listeners about how to approach retirement. Although he's comfortable in the job that he's been doing for 30 years, at almost 65 he feels it's time to try something new, but he isn't sure whether he's as well equipped for retirement as he was for his job. He's been explaining his situation to me.
I think that retirement is a sort of daunting prospect for anybody, really, because, you know, when you go to school, you're educated to get some qualifications, get a good job, and then in my day it was save up for a mortgage and a house. So we've done that, but you're not educated at all after leaving work. But I think if you have a serious disability like blindness, then there's more things to take into consideration. So in a way, I feel that I'm going to be starting all over again, having to learn new skills, new ways of doing things. I do have some things lined up to do, but again, it's just not knowing how much is enough and how much is too much. For instance, just last month, I was re-elected onto our local town council in Nailsworth. Wendy, my wife, and I are National Trust members, and I'd like to maybe do some work there, perhaps maybe even become a room advisor if that's possible. I'd like to learn to cook if that's feasible, do the gardening, take up archery. There's lots there, you know, it's an open page really, it's just knowing what's possible and what's not.
Well, I suppose that's what's rather puzzling in a way, in that you do have a lot of ideas. There are a lot of things you want to do. And I suppose what I'm trying to establish is it that you're afraid that you won't have the skills to do these things?
It may be the skills, but it's just wondering just how accessible some of these places are and how much I can do independently. For instance, if I do try to do some work with the National Trust, for instance, it's being able to maybe get to the local National Trust property by myself, and also I think I'd probably like to become a room guide, but just wondering if people will be, how willing they're going to be to come to me for advice and guidance.
But you obviously do have skills because, you know, you work, you obviously do a responsible job. Presumably you need some level of mobility and that kind of thing. And so give us a picture of where you are in terms of practical skills.
I do have a shaggy guide dog, Danny, my wacky Labradoodle, but public transport's not very good where we are. I think I did say that I'd like to learn to cook. At the moment, I don't even know how to use the toaster. I suppose I probably will see if we've got a technical officer in the local social services, if they still exist and how much they can do to help, I don't know. I'd like to be able to do the gardening as well, but I don't know where to find information about how to mow the lawn in a straight line, for example.
And is it that really you've been too bound up in your work to acquire some of these skills?
I think I've never really had to bother, so I haven't really tried. You know, work's a comfortable environment. You know, I know the physical environment, and the easy option would have just been to have stayed there indefinitely, I think, really. But I think I feel that I need to set up a new framework and a new structure. That's the kind of comforting side of work, I think, because, you know, as well as the people and the familiarity, is having a bit of a regime and a bit of a structure to life. And if any of your listeners have had experience in starting all over again, starting new life and starting new interests, that would be very, very helpful.
Well, we have already heard from some of our listeners, so you might be interested in some of the things they've said. Bill and Gail Guest are a couple who are both totally blind. They say they do voluntary work with guide dogs or the RNIB. Gail teaches Braille. Bill's a member of a choir, and they acknowledge that it can sometimes be difficult to get into mainstream organisations, but they say it can be done with persistence.
It's just that I was more interested in doing some mainstream stuff. In the past, I was a magistrate as well, so I know it is possible to do those things, but it's just sort of seeing what else is available, really.
We had an interesting one from William Page, who's got a number of suggestions. First, he says book groups, and he's saying, tell perhaps a dozen people you'll read a specific book and would then like to discuss it over a cup of tea in about a month's time. And he says, you hope 6 or 7 will come along and do it, and then set up the next meeting. Or a similar kind of method with pub lunches. In other words, you get a group of people.
Talking.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the idea being that you get a few people, maybe that are contacts, perhaps in the same boat, perhaps the same age, and simply pass it on from one event to the next.
Yeah, book club's a good idea because I like reading, so we have some nice pubs locally. So thank you, William, yeah.
What's missing in terms of how you might get this kind of advice?
Well, I don't think it's a problem as much as kind of, challenge and looking for opportunities, really. I think the information is out there. It's just that I think you have to be prepared to spend quite a lot of time looking for it and going to the right place and making the contacts. I think that can be difficult. It can be awkward. It can take time. I think it's just a case of, sort of planning, coordinating, finding who to speak to.
One thing I am interested in that you've suggested to us in conversation before we began the broadcast, that actually being alone in a house can be quite a problem for you.
I think most blind people, most people are better with, when they're doing something, when they're active, when they're with people. I find at home that there are some things that I can do. I can make tea and coffee, I can play with the dogs, do bits of housework and stuff, but I am far better when I'm with people or actively involved in something or out and about, enjoying myself. I'm not very good by myself for long periods of time. Short periods is fine, a bit of downtime is fine, but it's long periods that I would find difficult by myself with nothing to do. Blindness can be very isolating. You can be in the middle of a really busy farmers market, as we were on Saturday in Stroud with friends, and they all went off to buy various bits and pieces. I was only by myself a moment or two, but it actually can be quite lonely. Everyone else around you sort of talking and enjoying themselves. It can be quite a lonely sort of existence, I think, yeah.
It's quite interesting that you say that actually you don't need to retire. It's not a requirement that you do, and yet you have chosen to do so. And yet, on the other hand, you're obviously a little bit nervous of its consequences.
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit nervous because it's like starting all over again. It's going to be a new beginning. All these new things I hope to start, they're not all going to be successful. Some will fail, I'm sure. It's going to take time learning. And as I get older, things take me longer to learn anyway. As I say, the easiest option would have been to stay at work and carry on in a familiar environment. But I wanted to leave while I still got plenty of time left, hopefully, to start a new life.
Mike Kelly, thank you. So, as you've heard, we've already received some suggestions for Mike, but we'd like some more. And we also want to hear your experience of the significance of work for visually impaired people lucky enough to be in a job, and why we might be more reluctant than most to leave the comfort of a steady job which we understand and in which our capabilities and competence is recognised by our colleagues. And we stay with jobs because we've been commenting for some time now on the situation where the chief executive posts of the 2 largest charities for visually impaired people in the UK, Guide Dogs for the Blind Association and RNIB, are occupied by stand-ins. Well, Guide Dogs for the Blind Association has resolved its situation. They've appointed Tom Wright. His background is in care of elderly people with Age UK and Age International. He takes over in September. Meanwhile, the RNIB tells us that Sally Harvey, who had been appointed as acting CEO up until this April, is still in charge while they plan to recruit for a new chief executive later this year. Now, listeners may remember that we reported on the blind man who was tasered by police in Lancashire a couple of months ago because they mistook his folded white cane for a gun. Well, while canes are obviously not deadly weapons, they can be useful in protecting yourself from an attack, or so maintains David Black. David's blind himself, and he runs self-defence classes for blind people in Falkirk in Scotland. Emma Tracy from BBC Ouch went along to find out how he'd learned his techniques and how he goes about passing them on.
It's a very rare, scorching hot day here at the Forth Valley Sensory Centre in Falkirk in Scotland, and blind and visually impaired people from the local area are trickling in to take part in David Black's self-defence class. There are just 3 participants today, so everyone will get lots of one-on-one attention.
Is it in a cup? Want you to throw it in a cup? That's it. Excellent. If you can press the air into his ear. Yeah. To actually shock him.
Even though David had been practising martial arts for quite some time, 3 unprovoked attacks crushed his confidence so much that he wasn't able to leave the house. He wanted to learn how to protect himself as a blind person and then how to pass it on to other people. You've been into martial arts for quite a long time, haven't you?
Yeah, about 9-10 years. Judo, jiu-jitsu and until recently Aikido.
And why did you start martial arts in the first place?
Because I was scared. Yeah, I was attacked a couple of times.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I was, one time, somebody nearly flung me in the canal, but I flung him instead. Another time I got tripped up to see how blind I was. And the worst one was people just punching me out of nowhere.
The Forth Valley Sensory Centre is really important to David. It's where he went at his lowest point. And they introduced him to Alan Bell from the Scottish Safety Centre. Alan has helped David to turn his martial arts experience into self-defence moves that he can use.
The lessons are split up in such a way that the first couple of lessons we deal with the law regarding self-defence, when you can and can't defend yourself, and we also cover reasonable use of force. So David's already done lessons where he's told people about how much force they can use against a potential attacker. So the things that we've covered today is when an attack is escalated to someone strangling you, then the amount of force you can use has to increase to try and get that person off you. So just so you know that we do balance things out and we do cover the law aspect.
So in a nutshell, what is the law?
Basically, you're allowed to defend yourself, defend others, protect your property, and you can make a citizen's arrest. The amount of force that you use depends on the strength of the attacker, the relative strength of the attacker involved, and whether you're willing to use any other means other than violence to stop it. So it could be that you just walk away, could be you could go out and exit, but if you're blind or visually impaired, you might not see where the exit is. So you could use your voice to try and control things and bring it down, and if all else fails, you can defend yourself. But the amount of force you use depends on the person and the size of the person and what they're like and how much aggression they're using.
And when the person tried to get you in the canal and you threw them instead, had you been doing any martial arts at that stage? How did you make that work?
Yeah, I was doing jiu-jitsu at the time. He taught me how to use my stick to defend myself. I held my cane up to defend myself. And he grabbed my cane and I pulled him when he went into the canal. When I heard the splash, he just started walking. So,
gosh. I mean, is that something that you would endorse? Do you teach moves with canes or sticks?
Exactly, we do. The cane is an improvised weapon. If you ask any police officer, and a lot of our instructors are police officers, and our courses are endorsed by the police as well. So everything we teach within the law. And one of the aspects of the law is an improvised weapon can be anything you have on you that you use in everyday use. David came to us with a bunch of techniques about the cane, which he actually taught some of us about, and we've adapted that into the course. So the move that he used to throw someone in the canal was one of the moves that David taught.
So how did it turn from martial arts to self-defence?
The Centre for Personal Safety, all the techniques are taught realistically.
Yeah.
It's no strange kung fu, crouching tiger, hidden stuff. It's actual practical self-defence.
Before David learned self-defence techniques, he hunched over when he walked, his arms were clutched in by his side, and his posture was incredibly tense. Now he walks tall and he even uses a longer white cane as a result.
I'm a lot happier than I was last year, put it that way. My doctor is pleased with me. He's noticed a massive difference. I had depression and stuff like that, and he's really proud of me. He's happy with me. My family has noticed a massive difference as well. Everybody's noticed a difference in me. I'm walking with my head up, I'm not scared anymore, I'm not thinking is this going to happen? Is that going to happen? Is somebody going to fly at me with a samurai? So, no, I don't think those things anymore. When I started doing self-defence, I used to walk with my head down. The world was closing in when I was losing my eyesight. So the person I was years ago was cuddled up into a ball. I'm actually doing the action and remembering what it was like when I was walking. My back posture was horrible. My knees were all straight. I wasn't in a good place, but now I walk, head up, back straight, knees slightly bent. I'm nice and relaxed and I can shout now. Before I was really, really quiet and couldn't say anything. That's probably why they attacked me.
Tell me a bit about how you teach your moves as a blind teacher.
Very carefully. And this is my 4th class, so very carefully and slowly and with a lot of help.
So carefully as in you don't want to lamp
accidentally
somebody?
Poke somebody in the eye or boot somebody in a place that they don't want booted. It's just I'm very conscious of the fact that I can't see and the people that I'm training can't see, so it's good to have sighted people in to help me.
And is it important to have a blind person teach blind and visually impaired people this sort of stuff, or does it make any difference?
Oh, I think it makes a huge difference. I think if you've got someone who is blind or visually impaired who can stand up and say that I've not only done the course exactly as I'm teaching you just now, but I'm also an instructor, it gives a huge amount of confidence to that person, but it also gives confidence to the people that are taking part because they realise that it's achievable.
My name's Stephen Smith. I live in Polmont, outside Falkirk.
Why did you decide to do this class?
Because I wanted to find out what it was all about and make myself much safer in that.
And have you ever had an experience before that where you could have done with having?
Maybe years ago, just folk falling in the street and that, and just things like that, and it's made me more safe now, more confident in that. And anybody came up to you, you could get away.
If negotiating with someone or moving away fails, Dave showed me that by holding my cane in both hands across my body at head height, I can not only use it as a barrier, but if someone grabs it, I can push against them and turn to the side, which not only knocks them in the head with the cane, but sends them falling to the ground, hopefully.
So basically I've got the cane straight across me in my 2 hands like a barrier.
Yeah.
And I've got my left foot forward, so I'm in a defensive.
It's a defensive position, yeah. Use your voice to actually shout. Be serious. Back away, leave me alone.
Back away, leave me alone.
Help. If you're actually holding this cane up, they're showing people, because when it was folded in,
Yeah.
nobody could see it. It was
Right.
just you and him.
So it's
close.
kind of up at my face.
So if
height,
you're holding it
my
up,
head height.
people can see there's a cane. You're a blind person being attacked. This is a man with no cane attacking you. So when you feel the contact, the grab, you shout, let go.
Let go.
Now if you feel the push, I want you to pull and turn to your right. I want you to feel
So I
that.
pull it towards me
And then turn to your right.
Right.
That's it. Yeah, you're actually using the momentum. Okay. So, give me that.
No. What? I want it to come apart. The problem with canes is they're in sections. It just came apart there.
It actually uses an energy.
So they're pushing and I'm pulling.
Yeah.
And then I twist and I catch them off guard. And they have to let go.
And if you actually push down, do you feel?
That gives me time to get away.
So it's actually doing more.
So it's twisting your arm.
And if you push here, you feel my shoulder here.
Yeah.
It's actually pushing down.
Ah.
That's where I'm actually going with it. So
That's
if I
really
push
good.
in, that's it.
Cool. I love it.
Oh, it's a minute.
I feel better about my cane now, to be honest.
Emma Tracy, who in future I will treat with even greater deference than before. And that's almost it for today, but we'd especially like to hear from you about any sleep problems that you have and how you've gone about dealing with them. It's well established that people with little or no light perception do experience disturbed sleep patterns. We're planning to report on the latest research, but we want this to reflect real people with real problems and solutions. So please do get in touch. You can call our action line for 24 hours after tonight's programme on 0800 044 044. Email in touch at bbc.co.uk or go to our website and click on the Contact Us link. From me, Peter Wight, producer Lee Kumatat and the team, goodbye.
This is Chris.
And this is Pauline.
Reading out the questions for the client consultation survey. This is advanced information in order to give you more time to consider your responses. Client consultation. Established in 1895, the Isle of Wight Society for the Blind IWSB, is one of the oldest independent charities on the Isle of Wight. We are inviting clients and prospective clients to have their say and identify their priorities in a consultation exercise that will help determine Isle of Wight Society for the Blind future plans and activities. Our continuing purpose is to provide practical, emotional and educational support for visually impaired people, their families and carers, and promote awareness of the needs of those affected by sight loss amongst the general public.
We strive to help people maintain independence, learn new skills and participate in social, physical and educational activities to reduce loneliness and isolation. Currently, we organise weekly coffee mornings, educational talks and seminars, craft clubs, weekly swimming sessions, walking and golf, a visiting and befriending service, a weekly audio version of the Isle of Wight County Press, and a library of audio books. To help ensure the services we provide in the future meet the needs of our existing and potential clients, the Society will use the survey to guide and develop our strategic plans. With your help, we can ensure that our resources are targeted wisely to meet your needs. Thank you very much for participating in this survey. Your feedback is invaluable in guiding our future.
Do you currently use any of the services supported by the Isle of Wight Society for the Blind? Your answer is either yes or no.
If you answered no, please go to question 3. If you answered yes, please rate how positive each have on your well-being under the following. And the headings are not applicable, not at all, slightly positive, moderately positive, very positive, extremely positive. This is Strollers Walking Group, Dolphin Swimming Group, Millbrook House Weekly Coffee Morning,
Bembridge Monthly Coffee Morning,
Knighton Monthly Coffee Morning,
Freshwater Monthly Coffee Morning,
Owls Millbrook House Meeting with Guest Speaker,
Knitters and Natterers Social Group at Millbrook House,
Striders Walking Group,
Talking News,
Audio Library,
Newsletter,
Millbrook House Resource Room of Aids and Equipment for the Visually Impaired,
Millbrook House Braille Document Production,
Millbrook House as a point of contact for information for the visually impaired,
Isle of Wight Society for the Blind Volunteer Home Visit Service,
opportunities to volunteer for IWSB,
the Golf Group
and the 10-pin Bowling Group. Please rate how positive an impact the following services might have on your well-being if IWSB were able to coordinate them for clients. As with our existing provision, the Society covers any general administrative, organisational costs and room use at Millbrook House. Categories are, and we'd like you to say not at all, or slightly positive, moderately positive, very positive, extremely positive. Age-appropriate exercise classes such as yoga.
Other sport or activity taster days.
Support to participate in a sponsored challenge event, e.g. the Isle of Wight Cycle Challenge, walk, run, marathon, skydive, etc., to raise awareness and funds for the Society.
Craft taster sessions.
Monthly food and drink tasting group with sessions at Millbrook House.
Monthly food and drink tasting group with sessions at other venues.
Quarterly day trips to Isle of Wight heritage sites or tourist attractions.
Quarterly day trips to the mainland heritage sites or tourist attractions.
Holidays and short breaks organised by the Society, supported with the provision of sighted volunteers to assist with guiding, not care provision.
Monthly music group to include singing, listening, and occasional concert or live performance visits.
Quarterly storytelling or poetry recital group, your chance to spin a good yarn or share favourite poems.
Social activities closer to your home.
Introduction to Technology course of perhaps 6 weekly sessions looking at computers, iPads, mobile phones and apps for the visually impaired.
Monthly technology group to keep abreast of development in computers, iPads, mobile phones and apps for the visually impaired.
Quarterly technology group to keep abreast of development in computers, iPads, mobile phones and apps for the visually impaired.
Evening/weekend social group for 65 plus year olds.
Evening, weekend social group for 50 to 64 year olds.
Evening, weekend social group for 36 to 49 year olds.
Evening, weekend social group for 19 to 35 year olds.
Evening social activities for young people aged 16 to 18 years.
Evening social club for 11 to 15 year olds.
Evening social club for 7 to 10 year olds.
Quarterly evening social meeting at Millbrook House for parents, guardians, carers of young people with visual impairment, with separate activities arranged for any accompanying young people.
School summer holiday activities or social event for visually impaired young people and their parents, guardians or carers.
Dancing.
Please add any further suggestions of services or activities you would like the Society to provide.
Other suggestions. Please suggest any sport or activities you would like to try. Please identify the challenge event or activity you would be interested in. Please suggest any craft activities you would like to try. Please indicate here the styles of music you would enjoy.
In relation to social and recreational activities, please indicate whether you would generally prefer activities targeted and arranged specifically for those with visual impairment, or activities that are open to both sighted and visually impaired people where reasonable adjustments are made to accommodate the particular needs of the visually impaired.
Visual impairment aside, on a scale of 0 to 10, where 10 is very healthy, how healthy do you feel at the moment?
Being connected is more than having a network of friends and family. It could include being connected to your community, having the ability to access services or help when you need it, and being digitally connected. On a scale of 0 to 10, where 10 is very connected, how connected to others do you feel?
On a scale of 0 to 10, where 10 is very confident, how confident are you using technology, the internet in everyday life? For example, using email, the internet, social media, online banking, shopping, etc.
How do you find out about the following? The headings are printed leaflets or posters, word of mouth, Isle of Wight Society for the Blind website, other internet, social media, radio, talking news, or other, and then please specify. Local events, social activities. Contact details for organisations and services for the visually impaired. Health information relating to sight loss. Other health services and information. And travel.
About Isle of Wight Society for the Blind. What, if anything, do you know about Isle of Wight Society for the Blind? How would you describe Isle of Wight Society for the Blind to others?
Would you favour a name change of the Society to promote a more inclusive organisation that supported those with visual impairment? For example, Isle of Wight Vision. Your answer is yes or no.
Would you like to suggest a new working name for the Society that would reflect a more inclusive and forward-looking ethos? Please remember that this survey and all responses are completely anonymous. Information gathered is purely to enable us to better understand the needs of visually impaired islanders to inform our future plans and services.
Please indicate which age range you are in. Under 10 years, 11 to 15 years, 16 to 18 years, 19 to 35 years, 36 to 49 years, 50 to 64 years, 65 to 74 years, 75 to 84 years, 85 plus years, or you've the option prefer not to say.
What is your gender?
What is your current status? Please tick all that apply. Are you a full-time student of any age? A part-time student of any age? Employed? Homemaker? Unemployed? Semi-retired? Or retired?
Do you volunteer for any organisation? Yes? No? Prefer not to say? If yes, which organisation?
Please tell us the first part, that is the 4 digits, of your postcode.
Please let us have any comments, questions or concerns.
Please identify if you have completed this and independently, firstly as a visually impaired client or prospective client, or as a volunteer, carer, guardian or visually impaired parent.
Thank you for completing this survey.